Well, David Barkin, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for sharing some time with me. I want you to tell us a little bit about Ultimate Peace and how you're using sport to generate something that just sounds magnificent. If only we could all achieve that, right?
Mm, well, thanks, and thanks for having me. Uh, so, I think to understand Ultimate Peace, you have to understand the sport itself, which is a unique one, in that the game, even at the most competitive levels, is self-officiated, and because of that, um, it requires something from players that other sports really don't, which is a discipline of um, dispute resolution, which involves, of course, listening to other people's opinions, factoring that into your own thinking, and ultimately coming to a resolution on the field. I've played in hundreds and hundreds of games over the course of over 40 years. And I can tell you that I've been in situations where I've had to make a very difficult decision based on what I thought happened. But as you know, in sports, we want to win. So I also was considering very much the outcome and my team's will to win, and making the right call in the moment has always been a challenge. It was a challenge to me as a young person. It's a challenge to people who learn how to play. But a core competency of a great ultimate player is that they can do the right thing. They can make the right call and the game can move on. So I've played in the finals of the World Championships, for example, without referees, where two people disagree on what happened and they have to come to a solution that's going to allow the game to go on. And that is not easy to do. And it is exactly why I wanted to bring Ultimate Peace to the Middle East. I had grown up there as a kid. I lived in Israel for a while. I saw the inequities that were part of the region's culture and history, and I wanted to go back there as an adult to bring what I had learned as a young person. Hopefully, I didn't know if it would work or not, but I'd hope that if young Israeli and Palestinian, Jewish, Muslim, however you want to cut and slice it, young people who lived side by side but had no interaction at all, they could find a common ground on the playing field and learn to play the sport, learn the values of the sport, learn this, as I said, this discipline of self-officiation and solving conflicts peacefully and civilly, and in the context of sport, maybe that would have an effect on them in their lives outside, and maybe it would impact them as they became adults. That was the idea. It was a dream. Could it work? We didn't know. We just tried it. We were absolutely stunned to see how quickly the young people in the Middle East took to the sport. And I think the main reason that I would say our program has been a success, and I can talk about that a little more, but I think the main reason has been because in the Middle East, sports is a context where, unfortunately, violence, racism, a lot of the angst that you see people living with gets acted out on the field. I mean, it's not
Mhm.
unusual. It happens everywhere in the world, right? But especially in the Middle East, you see that. And when I was a young person and I was playing sports, um, fights were routine. Name calling was natural. It was it was the place where people would release their all of the stuff that they were holding in. And unfortunately, that made sports very unenjoyable for me. So I thought, having had a transformative experience myself as a young athlete playing Ultimate, having played soccer and basketball and other competitive sports where I was allowed to be, frankly, a jerk. And I started playing Ultimate, and my teammates told me, "You can't do that. You've got to make the right call. You can't cheat. You've got to be civil to the opponents because in Ultimate, what we consider to be um, modeled behavior is, we like to see, and now I'm saying this as a player who's been playing for many years and a coach, and um, we like to see people take responsibility for their actions, and I wasn't great at that. But once I learned how to do it, I knew that there was something there to give back. I knew that I could and should bring it to the Middle East, where I thought, having seen like I said, the problems, so many problems of division and hatred and misunderstanding, that I felt like this is a sport, this is a playing field, if you will, that I think will allow for people to open their minds and open their hearts, and maybe see each other differently, and that's what's happened.
Mm. It raises, just that introduction raises so many questions and so many different elements that we can cover. But I guess one of the things that stands out is you were saying your childhood there in Israel. And I think about um, what you grew up with and how you experienced it, and what the children of today would be experiencing. And, what happens in the future, because today's kids are tomorrow's adults and politicians and world
Yes.
leaders. How do we overcome that? I mean, programs like yours in a small way are impacting, and you hope that those roots grow out. But it's very difficult, isn't it, when you see these things replicated again and again, or coming back to the fore? And even let's move away from the Middle East. Let's look at the world generally and social media now, where people are having these battles on social media, and it's like that beauty of ultimate Frisbee in having to negotiate and come to a point and sort out where we're going without a referee. Gee, if only we could get the world's politicians to play the sport.
Yeah, well, that's a great point, and yeah, there's a lot in what you said. Um, well, first of all, so when I was a young person, I was there only for a few years, so I was back and forth between Israel and America, and it was a different time. You're absolutely right, and things are different today. Some would say much more challenging, and I think that would be true. Um, but it's a different world. It's not just a different region, and and we are disconnected. We're way more disconnected than we've ever been. I think because of social media, phones, all the things that we talk about all the time.
All the things that
Young
are
people don't
supposed to
even know.
connect us,
What's that?
all the things that are supposed to connect us have
All the
made us
things that
more
are supposed to
disconnected.
connect us divide us. Yes, I think that's true. The technology that's supposed to connect us divides us. I think we see that as much as we um, would hope that when there's political conflict, that people would find ways to come together. In fact, and in our country, for you can see this, we are as divided as we've ever been. Certainly, within the last 100 years. So I am sure that it is. I'm convinced that programs like ours are important, and not because we're ever going to make peace between governments. We know that's not possible, and we've been very clear about that. Don't think that we have these wild aspirations to bring peace to the region. But what we do is we make peace between people who would otherwise never have any interaction. And that opens the mind and opens the heart. And the more we do of that, the better. And so, what happens to a young person who's in our program? Well, I'll tell you, example of one right now. Her name is Zainat, and she is 27, I think now. She's a 27-year-old Muslim woman from a little town in Israel called Tamra. Now, Israeli Jews, they'll drive back by that town every day, but they'll never go in. And Zainat, um, fortunately, joined our program when she was 13 years old and came to one of our first camps. She's now on our board of directors. She's now a doctor. She's a CEO of a startup, of a biomedical startup, and she's got an MBA, and she's incredibly accomplished. She's making changes over there, and there are many more like her. And they stay involved in the program. They're connecting the dots between their worlds in medicine, in high tech, in the world that they live in culturally and socially, and they're staying involved in our program. And for me, there are many people like that who are weaving these things together as they get older. So, are we bringing peace to the Middle East? No, not technically, but are we bringing peaceful thinking, peaceful behavior, peaceful mindsets, and changing the way people think in order to live their lives differently and lead differently? Absolutely, that's what we're about. And so imagine that there's hundreds, thousands of young people out there in this small region doing this work, we have to believe that that's worth something.
Mm. There's also a real disparity, isn't there, between, you know, life on the ground as it is for all people and the media coverage that we see. And, we only ever really tend to see the worst of it. And yet you're talking about these seeds of the best of it, and providing some sort of a future. But there's always a temptation also, I think, for the media to, whenever sport is involved, if sport says, yeah, we want to make this difference, yes, we can make a positive impact, yes, we can help with social change, sport is judged so heavily. It's like, oh, well, look, you failed. It's like, no, but we're not in charge of the country. We're not in charge of
Exactly.
the geopolitics, but we're sowing these seeds. How do you keep refreshing your own energy and your own positivity about continuing to do this in the face of whatever onslaught there may be, whether that's political or media or anything else?
It's an excellent question because the October 7th and the ensuing war brought out a lot of, as you know, a lot of opinions that were quite righteous and often very sort of specific to one side. Very few organizations, politicians, leaders would be willing to sort of say, hey, we kind of see the nuance of this, the different sides of this, and we need to understand them better in order to come together. In fact, what we see is, oh, which side are you on? And that's the immediate reaction that we see today. And so for us as an organization, we got we've got noise from every side saying, take a side. You've always been sort of neutral, if you will. You've been about bringing people together, but this is one of those times where you just have to take a stand. And our position is, if we take a stand, first of all, it's no different than anyone else. And second of all, it doesn't even consider the nuance of the situation, which is there's people have valid positions on every side of this conflict. What we need to do is try to understand them, but to take a stand would mean to alienate one side, which would then uh, kind of render our program impossible to facilitate anymore. We couldn't do the work. So what we have to do, which I hope it's a model for others, is do our best to not be reactive and to not just say, oh, that's messed up, I'm against them forevermore. Instead say, yeah, that is messed up. And let's try to understand where that's coming from. And let's help others understand why that's messed up. And then let's look at the other things that are happening on different sides and try to understand that and talk about that, but not shy away from it. One of the things we've been doing is panels. Some of our graduates have been getting together, Israelis and Palestinians alike, and having conversations about these things in public so that people can understand what they absolutely do not understand from outside the region. If you don't live there, you don't know what's going on, and that's just a fact. And if you if you talk to them and you ask them what's going on, even they will tell you, I don't even understand what it is. I'm doing my best every day. I've lived every day of my life in this region, and I still don't understand it. But the difference is that they're trying to understand the complexity of it. And if you understand the complexity a little better with better questions and fewer answers, then we're getting somewhere. But that is our take. Our take is we have to facilitate that understanding because the forces against that understanding are so great that if we don't do it and others don't do it, it'll go away and the division will be like calcified forever. So not that we have such a big role. We're a little organization. We do little things, but there are other organizations like us. And I think we have inspired people, both inside the program and outside the program, to think differently. And I think that's what keeps me energized because, I have a full-time job. I'm an organization consultant. I work in strategy and culture work around the world in nonprofits and social change organizations. But this is my passion, and I put so much time and energy into it because I feel like everywhere I look, I'm seeing things go in the wrong direction. And I need to keep doing this for as long as I can and mentor other younger people who are coming out of the program to keep it up.
I don't know if you've got any aspirations to one day see ultimate peace, which is ultimate Frisbee and these sort of peaceful resolutions that are bubbling underneath, playing a role in the Olympic Games. But I wonder what
Mm,
you think when the world says, just like you were saying before, to the IOC, for instance, or the Olympic movement, you need to pick a side in this. You need to ban those athletes because what that country's doing to those people is wrong. And I think many people can see, where the negativity is, where the wrong approaches are, how dangerous things are, how tragic it is for people on whichever side. But what do you see when people say those sorts of things? Where do you see that role of sport and boycott to bring about change? Or should it always be inclusion to bring about change?
mm. I guess I would ask, what does that boycott get us? What does it teach us? What does it help us understand? I mean, it's taking a stand. I get it. It's taking a stand against a Russia or potentially an Israel or South Africa in the past. It feels to me like it's um, if it's not there to facilitate something positive, then I'm not sure it's as helpful as saying, well, can we, as an Olympic movement? I mean, it's interesting because Ultimate is part of the Olympic family now and almost made it into the 2028 Olympics, but did not. Um, Unfortunately, I don't know what other sports made it ahead, but they did. But still on a docket and working hard to get there. And I think that what we bring to the table is is a little bit more of sort of less about win, lose, right, wrong, this or that, and more about what's going on. Let's figure, because isn't that what the Olympics? Isn't that what sports is supposed to do? Is unite us? I mean, isn't that the one time in the 4 years where we're supposed to put down our weapons, literal and figurative, and just be together and celebrate our humanity, the games that bring us together in different ways. So I'm not sure what exclusion does, but I don't have a great feeling about it, and I would much rather see the Olympic Committee and just countries in general talking to each other instead of shutting them out.
David Barkin, really great talking to you. Thank you for talking about Ultimate Peace and all the very best with your ongoing programs.
Thanks so much.